Hello, I'm Jim Budd. This is my where I work in this is the stained glass studio. We've been working on an amazing window from Dudley, Top Church Dudley, made by Joseph Backler. It's the only surviving window by him in the country. We've been working on it for 6 months. It's been a very challenging job so far. We've had to clean the glass, repair broken pieces, and paint, and we are about to start on the painting of new pieces. The most difficult thing has been that when they made this window, they made it in a sort of a bright way. What I mean is, in their studio they were able to paint it as per how they wanted, with shade and light and all the rest of it. And then they seem to have taken it, put it in the church, and it's been way too bright. And they painted everything with a brown wash. Yeah, and we think that's original. You know, they turned up by the church, put it all in.
It was too blue.
Yeah, and they've just, so everything's covered in this, what we call cold paint, which is paint that hasn't been fired in the kiln. So kiln fired paint will withstand any kind of weathering, and you know, it's permanent. Whereas this cold paint will come off with a solvent. So any cleaning we've done, we've discovered that we can do very little without affecting this layer of brown. It's part of the original artist's sort of intent, or at least their action. So it's part of the work of art. We can't just clean it all off and take it back and you get this massively bright window, which is sort of bleaches out because it's so bright, because it's, you know, at the east end of the church, and you know, and that's the whole focus. I'm guessing that's what they went through at the time. But it does make it really difficult copying the paint, because everything's got this layer of brown over the top. Some of the pieces are so dark you can't see what's going on in them at all. You know, and they're supposed to be depicting, say, on the background, depicting clouds or whatever, details. You can't even see what the details are unless you put them through a really bright light. You know, so this is one of the most difficult issues that we've come across. So this piece here we've cleaned. So we've cleaned all that brown off. So this is the, and it's also been glued and that's been filled there with resin. And what Abby's doing is painting in the resin and painting in these little white cracks with the tiniest brushes you can get. They're called 010 or something, aren't they?
So what I'm doing is, at the moment I'm cold painting to fill in the gaps that you see that have been filled with resin with a darker paint that will stop the light coming through so drastically in situ. And I'm doing that by building up the colours. So we start off with a yellowish base and then we stipple on a darker brown. So while we're doing it, we have to constantly be checking the light levels in it as well. You have to find a nice middle ground for it. So you need to find something that will blend in while the light is coming through and when it's dark in the church. So it's not quite perfect in either, but it's good enough that when it's at a distance, you'll never notice the difference.
So I put this panel out ready because so it comes here. So it was very dark, so it had a thick layer of dark. I'm calling it a naphtha stain. You know, if you're a woodworker, you use naphtha stain? Yes. I don't know if it is that, but it feels like an incredibly dark, sort of spirit-based or petroleum-based stain, which you got to think, well, what would they have had in 1820 or whatever? And it's probably a coal tar-based sort of thing that they've painted on. So we've cleaned all that off, but the reason we've cleaned it all off, we're trying to keep that original brown. I call it the naphtha layer, but that's just me. We're trying to keep it because we think it's important. It's a part of the original. But what's happened is that in the 1950s restoration, the new pieces of glass have been painted where there were pieces missing, and they've been painted kind of very well, but they've been painted in isolation from the window. So, and they've been painted in a traditional style of glass painting. Oh, it's not a great picture. This is a replacement piece. So this has been painted, and what's happened is you can see this red paint here over the top. In order to make it work, they've actually then painted over all the original stuff. So, like here, this is what it looked like. This red oil paint that they painted over the top, and it was really. We've tried so many things to try and take that off without taking the brown off. So all this has been darkened. These sort of wing feather details, they were never there. You know, that is actually what it looked like. It's lost a bit of density of the paint, because another aspect of the window is that the original paint surfaces have failed in a lot of places. So there's a lot of lost paint. I think because the underlayer, the original yellow layer, has slightly blistered or something, and so when they've added another layer, the second layer isn't well adhered. Something like that. There's some sort of mechanism, this multi-layer kiln-fired paint, and so there's a lot of little speckles where the clear light comes through. We've just made a decision that we had to remove the 1950s restoration, because over here it was all done on. These were on sheets of clear glass, just stuck on the surface, and over here they painted on the actual glass. So they painted on the original glass, and it's not what was intended. It doesn't look right, so we had to remove it. But in the process, we've removed the brown shading layer as well. So when everything's finished and we've painted our new pieces, we're going to have to do a sort of a mass blending almost. We can adjust the brown layer a little bit, but where we've taken it off, we'll put what we call a plate. So what Hannah was doing, which was making the plate, we will darken that plate down so that then it will blend together.
So you say with some of the original it had different colours, it had perhaps some blue hue in the sky and some pink. Are they gonna? Do you redo the colouring and then you do the same?
We're going to do the same thing, and I think like we'll probably do that, and then we'll slap blooming brown all over it, which will be a shame, because those, they must have thought, because you don't see that, you're totally unaware, aren't you, that there's blue and pink and all these other things in the window, and the intention was presumably by the artist to have them in there. And then they put them in, and it's like, woo. I think that must be the case. There's quite a lot of information about this Backler and what he got up to. But he only started glass painting, relatively, sort of recently, and then tried to become the sort of the most dynamic glass painter out there and make a lot of money. And I don't think he quite managed it.
So this, because this is the last one of Backler. Right, or we sort of think it's the last one of Backler. Do we know how many he had?
Well, they were
in total.
The East End of Hereford Cathedral.
It
only lasted though about 20 years before they took it down.
Really?
Because they put in a different window. I think maybe they put a Pugin window in. Actually, maybe it's a bit longer than 20 years. Not quite sure. It is all documented actually.
And that's all just down to fashion and taste.
Yeah. And they hawked around. They had another version of this, and they hawked it around and tried to get other people to buy it.
Couldn't flog it.
It doesn't. That's not to put this down, because I think this is extraordinary. You know,
Exactly,
it really is. You know, so rare and you know, if you come and have a look at the delicacy of the painting on this, it's absolutely incredible. But this has got all that layer of brown over everything as well. But you know, this beautiful, and there's blue enamels, there's sort of rosy coloured enamels. The hair is all coloured, and you know, it's really amazing stuff. I've not seen that in I've seen quite, you know, there's examples of this style by other artists in the country. You know, the famous one at the Soane Museum. But you know, it doesn't have this. It's not half as delicate as that. You know, it's so soft, that work, isn't it? And so, you know, his eyes, and so, you know, it's extremely important bit of glass painting. And I think it must have been done by Benjamin West. He certainly did the cartoons. I think that's net.
Yeah,
you know.
and you can tell that by the style.
Well, it's by the style and the association. They had the studios next door to each other in London.
Yeah.
And Benjamin West brought him on. Benjamin West had worked at Windsor, St George's Windsor, for the King, and you know, they were doing a scheme there, and then the artist died, the stained glass artist died, and so he was looking for someone else, and by, you know, I think maybe something like 1812 or round about that time, this guy was an enameller, and he basically brought him on, I think, and got him into stained glass, and they, you know, almost, well, look, if you can do this, we can make some money, mate. And they were going around the wealthiest of people, trying to encourage them to buy this style of stained glass. Quite interesting, really. Yeah. So we've got, for the figure of Christ, in the Vatican Museum, is this, which is where...
Yeah, they pinched it.
Exactly. Look at these feet. Those are the feet.
Yeah. Little gap between the toe.
So yeah, I mean, it's incredibly, you know, they've really just copied it, which is why that we think that all the details in this are so different from the detailing in this figure of the angel here, that we're going to be now. We started off going to make Christ's head the same as this, but we realised that actually the figure of Christ is painted in this way, much bolder, less delicate. You know, there's none of the enamels. It's not got the touch of. It's not got these lovely blushy lip. You know, whatever the bits. You know, there's just a slight bit of pinky, fleshy enamel on the back, and that's as far as it goes with embellishment. Whereas, you know, these sort of, and then this is from the 1950s. You know, that's you know, what you would think of as pretty good stained glass painting. So that's a time-served glass painter, probably from Hardman's in Birmingham or somewhere, who's, you know, doing a good job, but it's not like that, is it? So you know, our challenge is to do that.
So do you think West might have done Christ's head as well? Or
I think it would have been in the style,
of this one?
yeah, because the rest, yeah, I can't see that. It would look incongruous, I think, to suddenly go into a delicate thing.
But that was redone.
This is the one that was in. So this is the same artist.
Yeah.
So it's on white glass. They did like. There's a bit of an attempt to go a bit browny here. Again, it's sort of done well. You know, someone's thought about it, and but it's the general. It's done in a stained glass way with lines and with shade.
Yeah.
You know, it's dabbed and it's roughed off, and what we're going for is a completely different kind of thing. We have a yellow colour. You can just see it around the edge where there's been no other paint. I think I've got my sample up here. This is all quite, there's paint loss. So this would have been much darker. The paint's come off completely because they put the underlayer, this yellow layer, has failed, and then what's happened is it's got a darker layer, maybe 2 layers of paint on the top, and it's all come off. So you're going back to the white.
Like
The
when you
original
peel a
glass
sticker
is
off.
white. So you're back, so it's blistered off, So we're not really going to get back to anything like the original amount of, they call this modelling, don't they? The shadows and light. I don't think we can start messing with that. I think there's going to be this sort of feel to it, really. This one we've taken the brown off because it was all over. There was oil paint all over the hand on top of the brown, and we needed to see the tone of the hand to match with the other hand that we're going to pin with the head. And it was just completely obliterated with this thick stuff that they put on in the 50s. But as a result of taking the hand off, we just took all the brown off, and you can see the difference in colour. So say that there was that colour there, and that's the fired glass paint. And you can see where the darker shading areas have just come off. That's not us taking it off. That's what it was like, what it's been like for a long time. But it did make the cleaning really slow and difficult, and you had to do it under magnification. So you know that when you're cleaning, you're not taking it, you can't be abrasive in any way at all. Because if I scratch that, with my fingernail or something, it would come off. And so it's been a right old, tricky old thing to do. So it's coming on. But this is the sort of so far how far we've got with the layering technique. This will be a different kettle of fish, but actually we're lucky because we're down near the bottom. We haven't got a head to do, we've got one arm to do, and we've got a wing to do, and another wing there. So those are the 3 principal bits down the bottom that we've got to do. And we've got a good amount of surrounding pieces to give us now what we need to evidence to do that. But at the moment I'm concentrating on the top bit, and I'm hoping Sally will come back next week when I've got these layers sorted out, because if you paint the colours wrong, if you get the wrong colours, it's just a waste of time. It's going to end up being too bright, or, it won't look right. So I've done so many samples, but we're getting there now. So we've been trying every type of enamel you can get. There's a little line up there of different yellow enamels, and just the first thing I turns out to draw that.
It's always the way.
But you think, because there's quite a lot of colour, when you look at the edge of this, there's quite a lot of yellow in that. So that's what we're aiming for. So here's a sample with the yellow. It's a little bit, Abby tells me it's a little bit warm still. So we've still got a little, sort of a nudge it to a tiny bit greener. And then over the top, the next layer, it's not that, because that's got the brown, that's got the cold painted brown. The next layer would be up here, this sort of yellowy, orangey yellowy colour. So you've got this sort of colour here. And it all depends on how you put it on as well, because there's white coming through, a little bit of white coming through where the paint is lost. So we're probably going to have to paint it, rather than just a clear layer of colour, we've got to then stipple that to let a tiny bit of light come through so it matches this. So there's quite a lot involved in just getting the application technique right so that it blends. Because I don't know if you're, when they've replaced a piece of stone a pinnacle or something on your church. You know, they make it all beautiful and brand new, and sharp edged and everything. But here, I don't think if we suddenly made a completely, perfect, fully shaded piece, it's just going to look as incongruous as these, as these ones from the 50s. So I think we've got to blend it, as we've lost so much paint. Then we've got to find the next colour that goes on top of. So there's this browny colour here. But the more you put the colours on top of each other, the more they change. So you think, oh well, that's just another brown on top of there, and you put it on, and then it'll go orange, or it won't be the right brown. Probably find that this colour here, I don't know, I suspect it's more like a sort of a grey-greeny brown, but when it's amalgamated on top of this sort of sludgy colour and on top of the yellow, it looks brown. So it's tricky, and that's where we're at the moment, is really getting to the bottom of how to build this, because it'll be painted a layer at a time. So if you get your underlayers wrong, you'll never get your top layer right. So it's been a lot of thinking about and staring at it. Well, we're getting there. So those, you couldn't see through those at all. They slapped them all with paint, and up here they basically become black. And then what's happened? That's an original piece of glass there and there and there. And you can see this black paint on here. Yeah, they've just rubbed that on there, so their black paint won't look so bad.
Yeah.
So we've got to try and ease there. They didn't do that one, and you see that's as it looked in situ, that's there. That's original bit of paint on there. And then suddenly you got all this dark stuff.
So you really replicate that onto the edges, more or less, just continue it.
But if but then we may have to, in places we may have to darken it again a bit. But,
that's interesting.
Yeah, this is lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these little crests of the clouds, they've done in white,
Yeah.
But this is done on. I've taken these photographs on the light box, really, and I've then whacked up the exposure on Photoshop.
Yeah.
So you can't, when you get that piece of glass, you can't see through it. It's so, and how can you paint a piece of glass to match it next to it if you can't see through it?
But so that could be these guys trying to make their blending like they did up there.
Yeah, it could be that. But then we look at it and it's the same stuff like here, or whatever. But yeah, they made that. It's really difficult. It's so flipping dark that you can't see a thing. You can see a little bit of blue coming through there.
Yeah.
So you can barely see through it. And then so there's the blue is probably coming in like that. Someone in the 50s has done that and put that stuff over there. We've taken that off to get it back to the wing colour, because this is that's the wing. Well, it's actually one below that. Then what do we do with this?
Yeah.
So we probably leave it and then add this back, but then it's tempting to go, we could lighten that a little bit. But then are we then going away from the original intention, or, what they did? Mr. Backler turns up at the church. The church say, it's too bright, whack it off a bit,
How do you distinguish between the Backler darkening and the 1950s darkening?
Well, that's so difficult. It's just the look of the paint. So when you look at the so like here, you can see this red paint that goes across. It's even going across the frame.
Yeah.
So it's slapped on, and you know that's later. This got so many ethical sort of issues to do with what's the artist's original intention and how much do you remove the previous conservators, well, I don't know if you call them conservators, but the previous people who tried to make the window better, you know. So yeah, it's been a really interesting, and you know, I can't say it hasn't been without anxiety, but on the other hand, you know, we've enjoyed learning about it, and you know, it's you know, well, hopefully we'll bring it to a successful conclusion. You know, that's what we're aiming for.